it was a trip. So we got there in January. And so for January, February, and the first part of March, we just did drills in the desert, right? We walked towards the berm, basically. We would dig in, and then we would come back, and there was a bunch of other nonsense. Like we would do ruck marches with the battalion. It was like being at CAX, basically. They would do scud drills where we would mask up, all that fun stuff. And up until then, like, it still seemed like this was just routine nonsense. Like, I was in what was called LSA 7, Life Support Area 7, which was near the main highway leading from Kuwait into Iraq. I forgot the name of that highway, but so we just figured that this was going to be kind of like some big CAX, right? So one evening, it was like, I forgot what time we heard it. So George Bush comes on, BBC, NPR, all that stuff, and Radio Free America, whatever we were listening to it on. Somebody had like a radio, and he gives that famous, like, Saddam Hussein has, 24 hours to, or whatever he gave him, 24 hours. What did he give him? 48 hours? Whatever. So when George Bush was saying that they had so many hours to get out of Iraq, we were already loading up the Amtraks. So we were a track company. So we were loaded up in AAVs, amphibious, whatever AAV stands for. Basically the worst infantry fighting vehicle you could possibly be in, right? Like
amphibian
almost
assault vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, almost any caliber of weapon above like 7.62 will defeat this vehicle, right? And like the fuel tank is inside the troop compartment. Like all along the left side is like the entire 500 gallons of diesel or whatever that thing is running off of, right?
Yeah, you're leaning against a wall of fuel.
Wall of fuel, and then the front wall is the engine. And then there's a 50 cal and a Mark 19 on it, but the turret can't traverse to the left because the troop commander or the vehicle commander's position is his cupola or whatever you want to call it is over to the left. So whatever genius designed this vehicle that can't shoot to the fucking left.
Well, I never knew that. I didn't know that's crazy. Huh.
Unless I'm totally mistaken.
So, excuse me. Sorry. Gosh.
Thank
you. I've actually never been in an AAV. So
you lucked out. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it's not a fun ride. It's not a comfortable ride. And I imagine with a squad of sweaty ass dudes in mop gear cruising through the desert, it's not a fun ride either. What was that like? Just sitting there probably praying to get out of that thing.
So how it went down was so George Bush says the word and we push towards the border, right? So we're on the border. We're digging in for like approximately like 24 hours. All the ammunition to further the nightmare of being in the track, all the ammunition for the 50 cal and the Mark 19 was on the floor of the troop compartment. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't even like sit all the way down. Your legs were kind of up. We had the center bench. So there's a bench on either side and a center bench. The center bench was all dudes riding backwards facing the ramp. And then all of us were like to the side. Well, the corpsman was a Vietnamese kid, and it's just funny, but like not so funny. He was sitting with his back all the way against the engine, and later on during the ride, he's like, Sergeant, I have to move. I am burning alive because his like back is against like the engine,
God, that sounds miserable.
So we get up to the border, and once again, it still doesn't feel like this is actually going to happen, right? Like, I'm sure you've been in a ton of drills where you're just like, this is. Like somebody's going to call this bullshit off, right? They're not actually going to send us over the border, right? Well, that night, I should probably preface by saying like we had the vaguest of plans told to us as to what we were going to be doing, right? Like we knew that there was this place called Safwan Hill right over the border that was going to get bombed into oblivion in the opening salvo. And then recon was going to go up there and shoot everybody. So I figured that it was like an LPOP for the Iraqi Army. Mm-hmm. So we figured maybe that would go down and that would shut the whole thing off. But so the evening of the invasion, like every artillery piece I'd ever even heard of started firing. And so you're looking up with your NVGs and you just see wrap rounds. You know what a wrap round is. Like you just see wrap rounds just like streaking through the fucking night, man. And like just nonstop. Like it never stopped. Quick funny story is I realized that we had built field expedient Bangalores to blow through breaches on our way in if we had to. Mm-hmm. And we realized that we didn't have any priming systems built yet. So we needed detonators, right? Because it's another stupid story. But So I hop out of the track. They were in hold down position, so it was dug in. The track was in a ditch, so only the top was sticking out. I jumped in that ditch to crimp some detonators. And I was using a red flashlight down in the ditch. There are hundreds of artillery rounds flying overhead towards Kuwait. Old first sergeant comes over and gets to screaming at me because the company commander sees my red flashlight in the fucking hole. And like, I'm going to give away the entire position of 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, what are you talking? Yeah, bro, what are you talking about? Did you look up? You know?
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, so we go screaming, like, the engine revs, the ramp goes up on the track, and we go pushing forward. We went through the breach and we didn't hit anything. I'm trying to think if it was the first night or the second night we actually got a frago to actually do something. So the first initial part of the breach in Iraq, we didn't hit anything. We just pushed straight through, and like just ended up in Iraq the next day. So you're like, oh shit, I guess we're here. One of the first things we did is we cleared out an old Iraqi artillery position that had been like bombed to shit. Who knows? You know, there's just a bunch of artillery rounds or artillery tubes sticking up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Our track actually hit a anti-personnel mine, right? So it sounds like a sledgehammer, like of huge proportions, slams into the fucking track, right? And it trickles down somewhere that, hey, anti-personnel mine, whatever, and we just keep on pushing, thinking somebody was going to radio that thing in. Well, 37's log train then pulled into that next and didn't get the word. And so I think the first 2 casualties of the war were our career planner in 37, and he was on like Oprah afterwards, and our I forgot the other guy, like the motor T chief or something, like lost a foot to a fucking anti-personnel mine.
Fuck.
So we're still not hearing much. We're still pushing north. And the first actual frago, sometime in the middle of the night, like the lieutenant that's riding the track, like wakes up and yells gas down into the troop compartment because he, I don't know, thought he saw a gas round somewhere in a delirious. So we had a momentary panic where we're all trying to put every piece of our mop gear on inside the Amtrak in the dark. And finally we're just like, we just said, fuck it. So this whole period of time kind of blurs together a little bit. But so the next thing that happens that was of any import in that first 36 hours was we got a frago to assault a building that had been given tanks trouble, I guess, for the entire day, right? It's now the evening of the evening in, I believe. My memory's probably shot on this, but so me and the squad leader in the back of so being an assaultman, the assault section leader, I was able to attach myself to whoever I wanted, right? I would attach out my guys, and then I would look to see whatever infantry squad looked to be the most competent, and then I would attach myself to them. I would just be like, hey, I had a gunner and an A gunner, but I was like, hey, you guys do your thing. I'm just going to stay over here and support you, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm not, do your gunner thing. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what kind of build, like what exactly are we going to do if the tanks haven't been able to dig these people out? So this is kind of how this goes down. So me and the squad leader in the back are like screaming at each other, trying to hash out this plan, right? So I'm like, okay, hey, check it out, man. As soon as the ramp drops, you guys get security set. I'll locate a breach point and blow it open with a rocket launcher. He's like, okay, cool. So, you can't tell anything back there. You're like in a steel box of emotion. So, the engines are revving, the thing's moving up and down. The ramp drops and it's dark night outside. The driver of the Amtrak used to talk a gang of shit before we actually went over. And, about being like a tough guy kind of thing. But as soon as that ramp came down, he was screaming his head off, like, get out so I can close the ramp. It was like, okay, guy. So we all go rushing out. We get online, drop down on this berm, and I see this building ahead of us. And I told my small gunner ahead of time, like, hey, look, I'm gonna strobe my laser. I had a PEC 2. I had a laser on my M16. So I'm gonna strobe my laser on what I want you to hit. Or I'm gonna put my laser on what I want you to hit, right? He's like, okay, yeah, cool, Roger. So we all go screaming out, slam down. I see a breach point on this building. It's just like a one-story, like, did you go to Iraq?
I went to Iraq, but I was a FOB the whole time. Yeah.
So like your standard Iraqi one-story, like brick building kind of thing.
Okay.
I see a front door. I put my laser on it. I looked down at my small gunner, whose name was Weldon. I'm like, Weldon, hit the target or hit the laser. And he looks back at me and he's like, which one? So I look back to the building and realize that now everybody's PEC-2s are all over the building. It looks like fucking lasers everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I start strobing mine, and I'm like, hit the strobing one on the door, right? So Weldon puts the first rocket like dead center into the door, and the thing like blows up inside the building. When the smoke clears, I look up and the door's still on its hinges because it went straight through the door, basically. I'm like, so I start screaming at him to fire again. And this is my first experience with like the whole slowing down of time and combat and shit. Like, to me, it feels like this kid has taken forever with his A gunner to reload the rocket. So I turned to him to yell, because I think I told him to hit it again. Verbiage fucking disappears. Like, reload, hit it again. So by the time I looked down to him to scream at him to fire again, his A gunner was Johnny on the spot. I already had the new rocket in, and Weldon was hammering it again. So I was staring directly at the back of the SMAW when this fucking thing went off. So it felt like the hand of God just basically bitch slapped me to the side of the head.
Lesson learned.
From the back blast of the SMAW. So by the time I look back to the building, the door is like flipping end over end towards us now. So like, okay, cool. So the squad leader, Adam, he runs his guys over the berm into the building. And most of my stories of the first part of Iraq is a dry hole. It's like a lot of excitement, and then nothing happens. It's a completely empty fucking building.
Yeah.
So
hey,
that
it
was
happens, man. Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
It happens, but when you were putting those rounds into the building, you don't know that.
Right.
And this is your first like real engagement, right? So
yeah.
I'm sure the adrenaline was like boom, 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 boom. Like I'm sure everything was just firing,
Yeah. Well, and also as soon as the first rocket went down range, we were the first gun team to fire. So as soon as the first rocket went down range, everybody else opened up. The 240s, the M16s, it was like they just fired like the FPF, the final protective fires, real quick. They're like, so maybe it was good for everybody to get the nerves out of their system, like
for sure.
on an easy one, like yeah.
So were you glad that you finally got to because you did security forces and all that other stuff, and you weren't even expecting to go to Iraq? Were you glad to be there in that moment and doing your job as an assaultman?
Yeah, because it was, in my mind, I was going into this place to liberate these people from this dictator, right? So, and in every combat dude's mind, you have in the back of your head, like, am I going to be able to do this? Because you've heard all the stories, and you're like, man, okay, so it's game time. Like, am I going to let my guys down? Am I going to be able to perform in combat?
Sure.
Like, what's going to happen? Because I've seen grown ass Marines freeze in combat later on in life. So there's always that fear in the back of your mind that you're not going to perform in front of your guys, right?